Good morning, students. So, from today, we will start our social science classes, and I will be teaching you social science, which includes history, civics, and geography. Before we go to the chapter, I'll just tell you my name. My name is Bleshi, and hopefully, we will all get to know each other soon. And today, we will be learning chapter one of history. So, please pay attention. I would also be sharing the slides and the screen with you so you can look into the same thing that I can see, and we will all learn together. So, the first chapter that we are going to study is from history, and the chapter name is Modern Period in Indian History: When, Where, and How. So let's look into the chapter. Just give me a minute. I'm just trying to pull up the screen so you can see what I can see. Yes, right here. Okay, so chapter one, modern period in Indian history. So if we look, we get to see that what are we going to study in this chapter? We will be covering about the beginning of modern period in India, and then we would look into about events like industrial revolution that changed the world. To not worry about the terms, I will give you the brief explanation on what that means, and then in the end we will study about historical sources of modern period. Okay, so first of all, about when the modern period started. So here we will study about when. Okay, so when is covered in the first point. This gives us the timeline on when exactly the modern period of Indian history started. And then we will move to where, and that will give us events, and it will talk about industrial revolution and what exactly does it talks about. It talks about the events that took place during the modern period. And finally we'll study about the historical sources. How did we get to know that these things happened in modern period? So the historical sources are the ones that gives us answers to how all this happened. So we will see what those historical sources are. Okay. So right. So let's start with a definition. Okay. Definition for history. What is history, right? So there was a famous historian. Now, who is an historian? A historian is the person who writes history. Okay. So this person's name is H. Carr. Okay, it's CAR with another R. So I'm sure you can see that here. So let me try highlighting that here. Okay. So just just have a look here. I've underlined it. Even you can underline this in your textbook. So the name of the person is C.H. Carr. Okay, so Carr as in the normal car with an R, extra R. So it's Carr, E.H. Carr. What does he say about history? He says history is an unending dialogue between the past and the present. According to E.H. Carr, history is a dialogue. Dialogue as in when two people talk to each other is called as dialogue. So according to E.H. Carr, history is like our past talking to the present, and our present is talking back to the past. Okay, that is the definition that's given by E.H. Carr, and I request you to please make a note of this definition. It's very simple. It says history is an unending dialogue, meaning the dialogue does not end. And between who does this happen? Between the past and the present. So, according to E.H. Carr, history is an unending dialogue between past and present. Let me just give you an example about why we need to know history, right? I was telling you that we have 28 states and 9 union territories right now in our country, India. But did we really have 28 states and 9 union territories before also? So, how will we know this? What happened 50 years or 100 years ago? To know this, we need to know history. Okay, that's why it says, therefore, studying history is very important. Why? We can learn about the different dates and events that has shaped the present. So here we get to know our present and our past is linked together. And the link in the present and the past is the history. How do we get to know our past? Because of history. Okay, next. Now, there are many ways in which history is written, but one of the most important way is called the chronological writing of history. Now, I will please make a note of this as well. Please underline this word chronology. I will give you the meaning later. Chronology. Okay, make a note of that word of history. Now, I will please make a note of this as well. Please underline this word chronology. I will give you the meaning later. Chronology. Okay, make a note of that word. What is chronology? In your textbook, there is no definition. However, let me tell you, chronology is when we write about something on based on dates. Okay. Definition. No, that is some other lesson. Chronology. Chronology. The arrangement of events or dates in the order of their occurrence. Correct. So chronology means when we arrange an event that is happening or dates in an order of their occurrence. Basically, we have when we make a list of things that has happened based on dates. For example, if I want to write a story and I start from 1995. Okay, so I write something that happened in 1995, and after that I write something about that happened in 1996, and then 1997. So when I arrange events based on dates, those are called chronological writings. Okay, so one of the main forms of writing history is chronological way. Okay, so that is one important thing that we will learn. That is one of the main way of writing history. Okay, moving on, we'll just look into two different ways in which Indian history was written. Okay, so the Indian history in a whole is divided into two different parts. One is pre-independence and post-independence. So how many parts are Indian history divided into? Two parts. Pre-independence and post-independence. What is pre-independence? Before India got independence, everything that happened comes under pre-independence Indian history. Everything that happened after 1947 of 15th of August after India got in their freedom is called as post-independence. Please do remember this two divisions of Indian history. Okay, in the pre-independence period, one of a famous historian who wrote down the Indian history was James Mills. If you see, I've underlined his name here, and he wrote a book called A History of British India. Okay, and this book is part of the pre-independence Indian history. Now, how did he write? He divided the history of India based on Hindu, Muslim, and British periods. Okay, first kings who were ruling India were the Hindu kings, then the Muslim kings came, then the Britishers came to India. So he divided the entire Indian history based on the rulers of India, okay, Hindu, Muslims, and Britishers. Now, post independence, we started writing our own history, okay, and post independence, the Indian history is divided into ancient, medieval, and modern periods. What is it divided into? Ancient, medieval, and modern periods. This is post-Indian independence. Post-Indian independence is called as post-independence. Okay, pre-independence. How was it divided? Pre-independence Indian history was divided into Hindu, Muslim, and British periods. However, the post-Indian history is divided into ancient, medieval, and modern. Now, which lesson are we, which part of the post-independent history are we talking about? Modern period. Okay, the third one, right? So, what does this modern Indian history include? If we look down, it says this gives a description of kings and dynasties, and it gives description about society, culture, economy, changes that happened in people's life, changes that happened in history, issues of common people. So, in modern Indian history, which is our chapter and what we will be learning in this year, it includes things like kings and dynasties. What are the kings and dynasties that ruled Indian history in the country of India? How was it done in chronological order, as in who were the first king and the second kings, who are the kingdoms that came. And the second thing that we will learn is what happened during the rule of these kings, and also we will learn about the social life of people, the culture of people, and the economic changes in during this kings and in their dynasties. And we will also learn about issues that was faced by common people. So the entire syllabus that we have includes all this. Okay, now let's see transition to modern period. How did modern period start? Now we all know modern period, the first part of before modern period was medieval period. So how exactly did modern period start, and what was the beginning of the modern period of Indian history, and what happened after? So we will see two stages. In the first stage, in Indian history, the modern Indian history, the rulers were the Mughal Empire. Okay, this was in the 18th century, right? In the 18th century, Indian continent was ruled by Mughal Empire, and then it was followed by smaller regional kingdoms. And when the smaller regional kingdoms started ruling. The kingdoms were divided, the country was divided, and after some time, the European traders noticed that Indian subcontinent was rich and it was filled with good things. So they started coming and started having trade in India. And slowly from the Mughal Empire, the kingdom shift started to British, France, Portuguese, and Netherlands. How did they enter our country? They entered through trading posts. They came here as traders. They told that they only want to trade in India. Trade is to sell the product and buy from India. Okay, sell and buy is, buying and selling is trade. So British, France, Portugal, and the Netherlands came to India for the purpose of trading. Now, this trading happens for some time, and then this Mughal empire and the smaller kingdom is affected later. After some time of trading, this English and the French and everybody else is not there. We only have English and the French kingdoms. They see that the territories in India are very rich and there are lots and lots of wealth in India. So they decide to stay back in India while all the others left. French and English stayed back in India and they established their companies. And they started occupying territories in India in the 18th century. And once French and the English is the Britishers, right? French and the English started occupying territories in India, it led to a rivalry between French and English. Now there was a conflict and they wanted to see who is going to have more part of the country and who was going to prosper. Now, this led to the beginning of Anglo-French rivalry. Okay, what led to the beginning of Anglo-French rivalry? The trade in India and when they realized that India is a wealthy country, both of them had their companies in India and they started occupying lands. And when they started occupying more and more lands, it led to Anglo-French rivalry. Okay, now what happens in Anglo-French rivalry? There's two things that we need to notice regarding uh, the end of Anglo-French rivalry. I'll help you remember this. Okay, the first one is Battle of Plassey. The second one is Battle of Buxar. Please make a note of this. Battle of Plassey and Battle of Buxar. Battle of Plassey was in 1757 and Battle of Buxar was in 1767. Right. Once you get the names of this battle, I'll tell you why this battle happened and what is the result of this battle. Now, it's very easy to remember the dates. If you see here, I've marked something here. So, first one is 1757, which is easy to remember. That is 1757. Now, if you remember the first date, you can easily remember the second date. How? Bring down the 17 and add 5 plus 1 is 6 and 5 minus 1 is 4. So you can remember the second date, 1764. Once more, I'll teach you how to remember this. Do not forget it. Remember 1757, 1757. Okay, 2 sevens, 1 and 5. Now, bring down the 17. 5 plus 1 is 6. 5 minus 1 is 4. 1746. Now, in 1757, we had the Battle of Plassey, and in 1764, we had the Battle of Buxar. Okay, now let's go look why this happened and what are the results of this battle. Like I told you earlier, the contention or the fight between the English and the French led to something called Anglo-French rivalry. Now, because of this Anglo-French rivalry, British, because they hated the French, they did not want the French people to have their colonies here. British started expanding the land more and more and more, little by little, but they started occupying a lot of land in Indian territory. And they started made alliance with kings, and they started occupying more and more land. And after that, the English and the French came and met in a battle. And the first battle that happened between the English and the French is called Battle of Plassey. Why did this happen? Why is it called the Battle of Plassey? Because it happened in the Valley of Plassey. So just remember the name of this two war. That will be more than enough. Battle of Plassey, 1757, and Battle of Buxar, 1764. First of all, what is the reason for the war? Because both of them, both English and French, wanted to occupy territories in India. Who are the ones involved in the war? English and French. Now, when did this war happen? 1757 and 1764. What is the name of this war? Battle of Plassey and Battle of Buxar. Now, let's see the results of Battle of Plassey and Battle of Buxar. Okay. What happened after the Battle of Plassey and Battle of Buxar is that British won, that is English people won, and the French lost the battle. And once the French lost their battle, they left all the colonies and the British started taking control. So who is the winner in the Battle of Plassey and Buxar? The British. Now, British took over the Bengal province and they made it a colony of the British East Indian Company. Till now, they did not have colonies. They only had places under them where they did trading. But once the battle was over and once they got their victory in the battle, they captured the Bengal province and they made it their colony. They made it their land. The land of India was taken over by the land of Britishers, and the colony is a place where their desire and their rules and their laws is implemented. So the laws of the Britishers or the English started being implemented in the Bengal province, and because of that, they made Bengal their colony and they established their first British East India Company. So, which is the first colony? Bengal. And what did the British do in Bengal? They established British East India Company. Okay. And did they stop with that? No. The British gradually took over the rule of entire subcontinent, entire India, right? And the modern period in India is generally considered to begin with the establishment of the British rule under the British East India Company. So, the modern Indian history that we are studying now started after the British established the British East India Company. So approximately in the 70s, 1760s. Okay. After 1764, they established their East India Company, and that is when the British rule started in India, and that is when the modern period of Indian history began. Okay. Now, when this was happening in India, what was happening all around the world. We will see this and we will close for today. This is the last topic that we will cover for today. That is what happened in the world when the British was capturing and colonizing India. Developments in the world. So, India was not the only place where developments was happening or Britishers were taking over or other things, other historical events were happening. All over the country, historical events kept happening. And one of the major historical event that was happening around the globe or all around the world, which is remarkable, is industrial revolution. Now, this started in the 18th century, parallel to 1760s. When in 1760s, the British rule started, and in the 18th century, the British rule continued in India. Something else was happening in the outside world. That is industrial revolution. Now, where exactly did industrial revolution take place? It took place in England. Where? England. Now, what is industrial revolution? Industrial revolution is when we start using machines to produce instead of using human labor. If you see here, we can see goods were produced in factories with the help of machines. Now, with industrial revolution, machines replaced men. Why? Because machines, there is more production and it needs less time. There is more perfection. There is less faults. When human does, there is lots of faults. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort. So when machines started doing the work, the production increased. Now, when production increased, England wanted to sell their product somewhere to get money. Now, they were looking for places to sell or export their items to. And so much to say, their export markets became colonies like India. So they started exporting their goods to India. Now, once again, what is industrial revolution? Industrial revolution is when goods were produced in factories. Where was it produced? Do not forget this word. It was produced in factories with the help of machine. Where did this start? It started in England. When did this start? During 18th century. Now, because of industrial revolution, what did they want? There was more production. Because production grew, they wanted export markets. And where did they find their export markets in? They found it in colonies like India. Okay. Now, this was one thing that was happening around the country. There was something else happening around the country. The second thing that was happening around the country is called nationalism. Okay, let's see what is nationalism and end our class for today. So, nationalism. Nationalism means one's feeling of love and loyalty towards their own country. When someone loves and someone owns their own country, when they say this, when we say India is my country and I love India, that shows our nationalism towards our country. So the definition of nationalism is one's feeling of love and loyalty towards their own country. Okay. Now, because the feelings of nationalism that started rising around the world, slowly the nationalism also moved to India in the late 19th century. People in India started thinking when everybody else has their own country, when everybody else has their own land, why should we be under a foreign ruler? Why cannot we have our own country like we used to have? And they started becoming nationalists. They started feeling love, and they started feeling becoming loyal towards their own country. Now, the feeling of nationalism started across the world. However, it also reached India. And it reached India in the 19th century, late 19th century, and because of which the revolt against the British starts. Okay, just to do a recap on what we studied today, let's start with the first one. We learned about we learned what we are going to learn today. We spoke that we are going to study today about modern period in Indian history, when, where, and how. We spoke about E.C. Carr, who gave a definition about history. And what is the definition? He says history is an unending dialogue between the past and the present. And then we moved on to see what is chronological writing. What is chronological writing? Writing based on dates, or writing some or history based on events and dates. And then we saw that history is divided into two parts, that is pre-independence history and post-independence. In the pre-independence, history was divided based on Hindu, Muslim, and British periods. And who wrote about pre-independent history was written by James Mills in his book, A History of British India. Post-independence, history is divided into ancient, medieval, and modern period. Sorry, there are two divisions of Indian history. One is pre-independence and post-independence. And how is history written? There is two types in which Indian history is written. The first type is based on the division of Hindu, Muslim, and British period. And the second type is based on the division of ancient, medieval, and modern period. And now we are learning about modern period. And modern period basically starts after the colonialism of Britishers in India. Then we spoke about how the modern period began. First, our country was ruled by Mughal Empire, and slowly it became smaller kingdoms, and then the traders from outside, European traders, came to India, and after the European traders came, British and French remained in India when everybody else left, and British and French had a fight because more and more colonies was being occupied by both of them, and that led to a Anglo-French rivalry, and due to Anglo-French rivalry that led to war. And the two battles that we learned, I hope you remember the names of the two battles. The first one is Battle of Plassey, and the next one is Battle of Buxar. Okay, and when did Battle of Plassey happen? In 1757. And when did Battle of Buxar happen? In 1764. And what was the result of Battle of Plassey and Buxar? The British started there, made in Bengal as a took the Bengal province and made it as a colony, and the British East Indian Company was established. Now, when all this was happening in India, what was happening across the world? First one, across the world, the first thing that was happening was industrial revolution. What is industrial revolution? When the goods and goods are produced in factories with the help of machines. And the second thing that happened around the world is spirit of nationalism. And what is spirit of nationalism? When one's feeling of love and loyalty towards their own country. And when did nationalism reach India? Nationalism reached India in the in the beginning of the 19th century, sorry, in the late 19th century. And what was the results of nationalism beginning in India? Indians started questioning the rules of British and they wanted freedom for themselves. Okay, we'll end this here and please go through the lesson. And if you have any doubts, please reach out. Thank you.